Well, it's a big day in Albania for the Prime Minister. He's talking about offshore processing, return hubs, a crackdown on immigration. But we've got an exclusive interview.
With Christopher Hope, our political editor. He's been speaking to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Let's see what he had to say.
So, Keir Starmer, thank you for joining us today on GB News. Great to see you. In 2020, you said you want to make a wider case for immigration, make the case for the benefits of migration. How can GB News viewers believe you when you say you're concerned about it now?
Well, I've always said that our country should be able to walk forward into the future in a way which is bringing our communities together, our neighbours together. And that's why I'm clear that we shouldn't be an island of strangers. Actually, the way forward for our country is to go forward as one country facing the challenges of the future, as neighbours, as communities, but not as strangers. And my fear is that the, frankly, loss of control over the last 4 years by the last government, with the massive increase in the number of net migration up to nearly 1 million, that's quadrupled in 4 years. That is an incredible loss of control by the government. I think it's really important that we now take firm, effective action to bring those numbers down, which is why we published our white paper, which covers all aspects of migration,
the language there
and takes back control of our borders.
Your language on strangers, island of strangers, was language, some say, used by Enoch Powell. So how do you respond to the left-wing MPs saying you're adopting Powell-like language, a dog whistle almost?
Well, that's a complete nonsense. My values are about how we bring our country together. I've always believed in the patriotism that Labour has long embodied as a political party. We are proud of our country. We take our country forward. We do that by bringing our neighbours together, by being neighbours and being a community, not by being strangers. That is a strong Labour value. It's a patriotic value. We are a country which is diverse. I celebrate that, where migrants coming to our country have added a huge contribution and changed our country for the better. But we do that as friends, as colleagues, as neighbours and a community. And a country has to move forward. And I want to lead a country that's moving forward, facing up to the challenges of the future. And that's why I'm concerned that the last 4 years under the last government have risked us becoming an island of strangers.
Lots of talks about these return hubs, offshore processing possibly in Albania. What's your plans there? Is that part of your talks here in Albania?
Well, it's very important that we bear down on irregular migration, unlawful migration. We've already taken effective action on arrests and seizure of assets across the globe, high-level arrests. We've already got many agreements in place now with other countries for cooperating on law enforcement. You saw some of that here in Albania this morning. UK forces alongside Albanian forces. What now we want to do, and we're having discussions on, talks on, is return hubs, which is where someone's been through the system in the UK, they need to be returned, and we have to make sure they're returned effectively, and we'll do that if we can through return hubs. So that's what the talk's about. I would say in this area, no single measure is going to be the measure that is, if you like, a silver bullet. By putting it all together, arrests, seizures, agreements with other countries, returning people who shouldn't be here, and return hubs, if we can, through these talks, to add to our armoury, will allow us to bear down on this vile trade and to make sure that we stop those people crossing the channel.
It's all very well setting up these plans with Albania, but we found evidence at Manston, one of the processing centres, £80,000 being spent on satellite TV, video games in this one location. How isn't that a pull factor? The hotels we offer to migrants arriving in the UK, isn't that a pull factor to make people, encourage them to make that journey across the channel?
Let me be absolutely clear why we're in the mess we're in. The last government had an open borders experiment. Many people came to the United Kingdom and they didn't process the claims. So you've got tens of thousands of people whose claims haven't been processed. Therefore, they couldn't be returned under the last government. They were put in hotels. That's not acceptable. And the British taxpayers picking up the bill. That's why we've allocated all the extra resource to processing the claims. Where we've processed the claims and people shouldn't be in the country, they've been removed. 24,000 have been removed. That's the highest figure for nearly a decade. They're out of the country. They had no right to be here. That is the way we bring down these numbers. That's the way we get people out of hotels. Under the last government, there were I think 400 hotels. It's down. We've got it down to just over 200. That's not good enough, but it does show that we're making a difference.
Have you noticed a boom in Turkish barbers, many run by Albanians in Britain? Are you concerned about that?
Well, I'm concerned about anybody coming into our country who is not acting lawfully. One of the issues we've been dealing with on the border here is looking for cash for cars that are the product of the drug trade, in particular cannabis and cocaine. I am absolutely convinced that in order to take effective action, we have to work with other countries. Joint operations like this on the border, where we're using intelligence from both countries at a point of enforcement, is the most effective way to deal with it. I think in the particular relationship we've got with Albania, in the last 2 or 3 years, we've been able to show that those coming from Albania on small boats into the UK have dropped dramatically. That is because of the joint work we're doing.
Yes. Just on Brexit briefly, big weekend for you on the Brexit talk. Ursula von der Leyen on Monday meeting her. How can cutting migration square with allowing unlimited travel for 18 to 30-year-olds?
Well, we're hoping to ensure that we get a stronger trading relationship with the EU. That's what we're working towards. It will be good for our country. I'm not going to give a running commentary on the negotiations, but I was clear in our manifesto that there will be no return to freedom of movement. And the red lines we put in our manifesto remain our red lines. But look, we've done a deal with India. The last government took 8 years and failed. We came in 10 months, we got that deal. Done a deal with the US. Yep. Again, much talked about, we've done it. That will be measured in thousands of jobs in our economy, billions of pounds. And I do want a stronger trading relationship with the EU. And of course, to have better arrangements on security and defence, vitally important at this time.
Shabana Mahmood, your Justice Secretary, has said today there might be a moment of reckoning to come on the grooming gangs scandal. Will you have a national and public inquiry if Louise Casey finds widespread abuse?
Well, my view, I mean, these crimes are grotesque, and we must root them out wherever we find evidence. The number one route for me has always been a criminal investigation. I was the chief prosecutor for 5 years. I brought the first of these grooming cases to court, where we got successful convictions, people then sent to prison for years. Where there's evidence of grooming, the first thing that should happen is a police investigation. If there's evidence, put people before a court, and then if they're convicted, they will be serving very long jail sentences. On the question of inquiry, there has been a national inquiry into child sexual exploitation. There are a number of recommendations that need to be implemented. We need to get on and implement them. One, for example, I've been calling for over a decade, which is mandatory reporting, where those in a position of power and authority think or know something is going on. They should report it. That hasn't happened. That's a change that we put in, really important. And then a national framework for local inquiries where they're wanted and they will be effective. But the first route, and I say this as a chief prosecutor, a former prosecutor, should always be a police investigation, because better than a recommendation is a conviction that is measured in many years in jail.
It's a very final question I have here. What's your plans for your future? Will you fight the next election? You want to commit to that now?
Chris, you're getting way ahead of me. I'm absolutely clear.
Talk about it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely clear that my task is to rebuild our country, give us the security that we need. We're getting on with that. And what you've seen over the last few days, trade deals with India, with the US, hopefully a better trading relationship with the EU, very strong growth figures today, reflecting, I think, the decisions that we've made. 4 interest rate cuts, national living wage has gone up, waiting list will come down. There's a long way to go yet, Chris.
Thank you for joining us today on GB News in Albania. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you want us to tell us more and flesh out what this means? Is our Home Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, morning. Now, this has been widely floated that these hubs could be in Albania, Serbia, Bosnia and North Macedonia. But how does it work? People watching and think, does that mean when people cross the channel, the moment they arrive at Dover, we say, thanks very much, you're now getting on a plane or a boat to one of these hubs where their applications will be processed?
Yeah, it's not going to work like that, that's for sure. There is no doubt, though, that this is a major development. There had been much speculation for many months about whether the government was going to go down the road of trying to look at some kind of offshoring for those entering our asylum system and who may have not had a strong case to stay in the UK. Now, what this is not is Rwanda. I even hesitate to say it's a Rwanda light because it isn't. It would be individuals who have come to the UK, who have claimed asylum, who've gone through the system and had been given a decision, an initial decision, whereby, as far as the British government was concerned, there was no case really that these people should remain in the country, and they're from a safe country as well, but maybe they don't have the documentation, because we know, of course, that the people smugglers tell many migrants to throw their documentation away before they ever arrive in the UK. They would then be sent out to these third-party hubs, these third country hubs, the first one being in Albania, as you mentioned there, Andrew, a number of other countries in talks with the UK at the moment to set up similar hubs. So they would go out, they would be held in Albania basically, while any potential further appeals by these individuals are exhausted and the sort of processes are put in place to get them returned to their own country. So it is an enhanced way of kind of dealing with migration that we haven't had thus far. Remember, all we've ever heard from this Prime Minister from the day he was elected in July of last year was we're going to smash the gangs. It's been a law and order approach, a law enforcement approach to the migrant problem from day one. Now, clearly, he's looking at another aspect that could be described absolutely as a deterrent. Quite what a deterrent it will be at the end of the day, we don't know, because the thing I think to add about this that's important is these will be people who have been turned down. Many people who come across the English Channel either get allowed to stay or get leave to remain because they come from countries where you could never return them to, because the human rights lawyers would argue and argue successfully in the courts that these countries are just not safe to return them to. Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq and South Sudan and a myriad of other countries.
So, let's just be clear then, Mark. So these people, they've applied for asylum, the asylum application has been rejected, so then they've got no case to stay, but they can appeal. But so is it then the appeal is going to be processed in an offshore hub?
Yes, that is correct. What it's aimed at doing is trying to stop the process. And I think this actually will be welcomed by many people. The process that we've seen time and again, where people are turned down initially for an asylum claim, then it's dragged out in the courts for years with appeal and reappeal anytime that they're turned down, with, of course, these immigration lawyers well versed in what angle to use to try to ensure that their client gets leave to remain at the end of the day. It's to try to stop that process, and the government's quite clear, try to stop those who in the years that they could still be in the UK appealing and trying to stay don't go off and get married and have children and use that as a very significant lever to apply to the courts with a view to remain under European human rights laws.
But they can. Will we be still paying for them, Mark? Do you know, whilst they are treading water in Albania, frankly, on the beautiful beaches of Albania, treading water in the nice warm sea? Will we still be paying for them?
And there's the rub. It didn't take you long to get there, Bev. I knew we could rely on you. Yes, of course, we'll be paying for them. There's no doubt about it. Albania, they're not going to do it out of the goodness of their heart, are they? This is the British taxpayer who's going to be paying for them. OK, it will be, I'm sure, a bit cheaper out in Albania than it would be necessarily having to keep them in asylum accommodation in this country with all of the wraparound services that are involved in in that. But yes, it's the British taxpayer that's going to have to foot the bill until we're finally at the point where these people are returned to their own country.
And just on that, Mark, so the British government paid Rwanda like a bounty almost, an annual fee. So not only will we be paying for the refugees, asylum seekers, the failed asylum seekers, to be living in Albania, will we be paying the Albanian government a fee as well for the processing centre?
Yep.
So how much is that going to cost?
We will be doing, and it won't be lost. It won't, well, millions, many millions. It won't, and in multiple countries. It won't be lost.
Sorry, we've just
squirted up against the wall £700 million for the Rwanda scheme that never saw a single flight in anger, only 2 or 3 volunteers who went before it actually got off the ground running. This government, for whatever reason, you'd have to ask Keir Starmer, was determined that he would not allow the Rwanda scheme to continue and even give it a chance. But that was £700 million in the preparatory phase for that. We're effectively going to go back to day one again with these other countries. I'm sure it's not going to be anywhere like the cost of the Rwanda programme. That, I think that is for sure. But it's still going to be costly. There's no doubt about it.
Mark, just so we're really clear on this, because the detail is yet to be uncovered. Will this stop people who want to live in this country via illegal routes getting on dinghies to come across to the UK? Will TikTok this afternoon be saying, from the people traffickers, will they be saying, new deal, you don't get to go on a dinghy to London anymore, we're not going to send you over to Dover. What we're going to do is we're going to transport you to Albania, where you can go to the processing centre so you don't have to get on the boats anymore. It's not that, is it?
No, and it's all part of the calculation, isn't it? The odds that are weighed up, really, about the chances of being able to stay in the UK. At the moment, the vast majority of people who come over on small boats are going to stay here. It's something ridiculous. About 3% of those who come on small boats are ever removed, because the fact is that they, with the human rights lawyers who are now so versed and professional, they've had years to be able to develop their arguments in court. They're able to ensure that these people get the right to remain, because there are so many different countries that you could argue in a court in this country that, it's not really that safe to send them back to that particular country. And many of them just end up exhausting the appeal system over a number of years, going off, as I said before, and getting a wife and having a family, which absolutely then really sort of increases the chances that a judge will eventually rule in their favour. So it's aimed at trying to stop that. But no, I think the vast majority of people that are trekking thousands of miles from whichever part of the world they come from with a view to getting to the UK are going to make that calculation in their head, just like the dangers of crossing the Mediterranean or the dangers of crossing the Channel. The percentage chances are that I'm going to be allowed to stay in the UK, and it's not going to be a real deterrent at the end of the day.
Just finally, Mark, the portents here are not good, because, as you know, the Italian Prime Minister Meloni unveiled a similar scheme a year ago, a return agreement with Albania, 2 processing centres set up in 2 different towns. How many people have been deported in that year? Not one. Because the lawyers in Italy have tied it up in knots, which is exactly what the wretched human rights lawyers would do in this country.
Well, yes, that scheme has absolutely, as you say, has just been mired in difficulties with the legal system in Italy. I mean, they wanted to do it slightly differently, in that if you came across the Mediterranean, they would assess on the spot, really, whether they thought you had a chance of having a successful asylum claim. You'd be off to Italy, and if you won at the end of the day that asylum asylum claim, you could return to Italy. But regardless, yeah, it's been absolutely bogged down by these legal challenges. And there's every reason to believe that the lawyers in this country are going to challenge any decision to send someone off to a third country when they're still in the process of trying to appeal the decisions handed down by a court.
I think, Mark, the answer is we don't allow them to have any appeals. That's it. They've had one go, and the appeal, they lose the appeal, kick them out.
Well, I mean, listen, the Rwanda scheme, for one, it had its critics, but the one thing really big thing that it had going for it was the fact that anybody arriving potentially would be offshored in Rwanda. That would be it. You would never get the opportunity to come and claim asylum in the UK, regardless of whether there was any merit to your claim. That, because many people had said in France, when it really looked as though that was going to get off the ground, was a deterrent. People said that they would think twice about coming if they were going to end up back in Africa.
Fascinating.
Thank you, Mark. Well, the detail of this will be emerging. Mark White there, our Home Security Editor.